And so the time has come. A general election has been announced, and that means we need to have a bit of a chat. See, voting is important. For the majority of people, voting is the single biggest way you can have an impact on what is happening in your country. I know there are some edgy nihilistic doomers that'll be mad at me saying that, but stay mad pussies because it's absolutely true. Today, I'm going to talk about how you can spend your vote depending on the outcome you'd most like to see. In total, we'll talk about not voting, protest voting, the conscience vote, and tactical voting, and cover the pros and cons of each choice. Firstly, a quick explainer. In the UK, we have what is known as the first past the post, or FTFP system. That means, basically, that the guy with the most votes wins, and the rest are fucked. It's attracted a lot of criticism over the last few years because it doesn't tend to allow for much diversity in political parties. If a Conservative MP wins a seat with 40% of the vote, that means that 60% of the voters didn't actually vote for you, but they have zero representation. Now, we're not going to solve the problems of first past the post here, but it's important to note that our system doesn't really reward people for simply voting for the party that best represents their interest. It's almost always the case in the UK that, when you cast your vote, you're either voting to remove someone you dislike, or tacitly endorsing an MP as the lesser of two evils. With all that being said, let's just get into it because we've all got shit to do. First up, we have the runt of the litter. The choice to not vote at all. Reasons for this vary, but most are stupid and shit and terrible, and you shouldn't do it. Let's run through a few of the arguments and destroy them with facts and logic a la Ben Shapiro. Okay, this is the one that isn't completely shit because nobody ever explains how to vote and it's not at all intuitive, so here's what you need to do to vote from start to finish. First, you need to register to vote. I've added a link in the description for you to do that, and it's basically you just telling the government who you are, what your address is, and that you intend to vote in any elections that are relevant to you. You then get sent a polling card, which just tells you what and when the upcoming election is, the list of people up for election, and where you need to go to cast your vote. Once you know that, you just go to the polling station between 7 AM and 10 PM on the day of the vote, and vote for whoever the fuck you like. I've also linked another video in the description that tells you exactly what happens when you walk into a polling station, just in case you're worried about looking like a bit of a twat, but everyone's super friendly and willing to help you if you need anything explained. As an added bonus, it normally helps your credit rating quite a bit if you register to vote as well, so that's nice. Next up, I'm not voting because they're all the same, aren't they? They're all just in it for themselves. Well, yeah, but also not really. Some are definitely in it for themselves, don't get me wrong, and professional politicians are actual human-shaped lumps of shit, but not all politicians are the same. Let's just place the people are bad argument to one side for a sec, and let me put it this way. I don't think there is a landlord, or a business owner, or a millionaire, or any person in any position of influence in the UK that doesn't vote at all. Except for Russell Brand, maybe, but I don't take life advice from a man that claims to know how the deep state works without apparently knowing how buttons work. The reason they vote is because they know it is absolutely the easiest thing you can do to give yourself a potential leg up. It takes basically no time at all to do and doesn't cost you a penny. Voting isn't a chore, it's an investment you are making into your future, your financial health, your job prospects, your local infrastructure, everything. If you're wondering why your local town centre is basically just a crack den full of shitty kebabis, vape shops and Turkish barbers, it's because the government that was elected that you didn't fucking vote for decided to make it near impossible for small businesses to survive there. The fact that landlords are rinsing you out for rent is because the government that was elected that you didn't fucking vote for decided to act in the interest of people that will actually vote for them, rather than you, someone that will never vote because nothing changes. Even if you don't know who you want to vote for, knowing who you don't want in power is at least a start. Which leads me on to my next point. The second way to approach an election is to vote for someone on the basis that they are, in your opinion, a vote that does nothing more than say fuck you to the current government, the opposition party, or even just the system as a whole. The idea is that you vote for a parody candidate like Count Binface or Lawrence Fox, just to show the man who the boss is. A protest vote is essentially the lowest bar you can set yourself while still contributing to a democracy. You aren't really in favour of anything, you're just not in favour of the realistic options and just want to say fuck you, which, is fair enough. Here's the obvious problem with the protest vote. You're voting for something that would often have no real impact on the system to begin with. It's fine, ultimately, to vote in whatever way that suits you, but it's worth bearing in mind that your throwaway vote will ultimately work in favour of one candidate or another. You're participating, but that's about it. You're the guy on the dance floor that stands in the corner swigging a lager top, and you owe it to yourself and those around you to step into the metaphorical lights and break out the robot. Because let's face it, if you're willing to turn up in the first place, why not just do something a bit more meaningful, like our next option? Okie dokie, this is where you really start to rev my engine. A vote of conscience is where you simply vote in line with whatever party or candidate best aligns to your preferences. By voting with your conscience, it doesn't matter if your party has a realistic chance of winning. What matters is that you've cast your vote for a candidate that best represents what you value as a person. Now, this could be represented in a few ways. You could either vote for a candidate because they're a representative of a party you endorse, or you could vote for the actual candidate regardless of the party they're a part of because you think they'll do a good job at representing your constituency. This is absolutely an admirable way to vote, and you'll get no complaints from me. Most people don't really give that much of a shit about the inner workings or polling forecasts or anything like that. You just like that one, you vote for that one, and bollocks to the rest of it. But let's assume you want another option. You're not enamoured by any particular party, not enough to vote for them no matter what at least, so what do? What's the best course of action if you want a government that is at least in the same political ballpark as you, while minimising the chance of a worst case scenario? Tactical voting, in my honest opinion, is the only way most voters can effectively engage with a first-past-the-post voting system. Now, I know it's shit, and we all know it's shit, but it's what we've got. The idea behind tactical voting is that you look at the 2 or 3 parties that are most likely to win your constituency's seat and vote in a way that gives you the highest likelihood of not being completely shat on. Let's take a look at an example. In the 2019 general election, Torfaen elected Labour candidate Nick Thomas-Symonds with 41.8% of the total vote share. The Conservatives came in second with 31.8%, and the Brexit Party third with 15.4%. Now let's imagine that I'm, how can I put it, a gammon-brained fucking div. Really just a weapons-grade fucking idiot, and I'm sat there thinking, the Brexit Party have got it all figured out. I know that Nigel Farage geezer can barely maintain the border to his mouth, but I reckon he'll do a brilliant job at maintaining the border to our country. Let's also say that, at the very least, I think Labour are a bunch of idiots, and that Jeremy Corbyn couldn't find his arse with both hands and a map. In that situation, I might be inclined to vote Conservative. The reason being, if everybody that voted for the Brexit Party had instead voted Conservative, their vote share would have been 47.2%, enough to beat the Labour candidate and secure the seat. It's not your preferred outcome, but the reasoning is that the second best scenario is better than the absolute worst. Now, of course, there are issues with this too. It would likely force a large number of people into voting for the most pessimistic option. It also plays into the two-party system, because even if you do end up voting Lib Dem or Reform, you're likely only doing it to prevent one of the big two from getting in, rather than your vote actually being an affirmative endorsement of that party. That's really quite a depressing and hopeless view for a lot of people, but let's be honest with ourselves here. It's the reality. For now, at least. I'm not a fan of first past the post, but the way to address the problems with our electoral process isn't to abstain from it, it's to pressure the government into changing it. LBC presenter and self-professed numbers girl Carol Vorderman is advocating for the weaponization of tactical votes using a website called stopthetories.vote. If you, like me, aren't particularly excited about anything that the Labour Party or Lib Dems are talking about, but you would love nothing more than to see the Conservative Party ground into dust, then go check it out. Here's how it works. You sign up on their website. It tells you what constituency you're in, and it uses the latest polling data and other algorithms to tell you how you should vote if your goal is to ensure that the Conservative candidate does not win your seat. If you want to learn more about it, I've linked it in the description along with an interview with Carol by Politics Joe explaining more about how it works and the reasoning behind it. Honestly, unless something changes, I'll probably be voting in line with their recommendations because I'm in Fareham and we need all the help we can get. And with that, I've exposed my political bias. Long-time fans of the channel might be shocked to hear this, but the truth is that I despise the spineless gimp that is Rishi Sunak. I think that James Cleverly is about as useful as an inflatable dartboard. I think Oliver Dowden is definitely the kind of man that eats his own scabs. Kemi Badenoch is about as qualified to represent women and equalities as Jeffrey Dahmer is to represent minority men with tasty hearts, and that Grant Shapps needs to be donated to medical science so we can finally understand how it's possible for a giant fucking hemorrhoid to gain consciousness. So here's the boat I'm in. I'm most excited to see the Conservatives out of government, but I don't really have a huge preference over the Lib Dems, Greens, or Labour. Once their manifestos come out, I'll have a bit of a better idea, but from what I've heard from them so far, I can't imagine them convincing me too hard one way or the other. The reality is that Labour are probably going to form a majority government, and my constituency is likely to stay Conservative unless some tactical voting takes place. Now, I'd rather not be represented by Cruella de Waterlooville, and frankly, I'd be happy to vote for the Communist Party for children that can't read good if that's what needs to happen. Of course, your mileage may vary. You might be in a constituency where your preferred vote is a competitive one, and if so, that's awesome. If you don't have that much luck, I think it's probably worth exploring your options a little bit. I've listed a few useful resources in the description for you to get an idea of how voting in your area might play out, so have a look and find out what the situation is. However you go about it, all I ask is that you turn up and vote. It sounds really cringy, but honestly, it's the best way you can impact the direction the country is moving in. And with that, I think we can call it a day. Let me know in the comments how you see the general election playing out, and if you want me to cover anything or anyone in particular. As usual, thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please do like and subscribe, it really helps. A huge thank you to my enigmatic and ambitious supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to support, you can do so from just £1 a month. The link is in the description. Love you. Bye bye.